Hello, readers. Thank you. This is Miss Gina from K.E.T.A, Kids Excelling Through Adversity, and I'm so glad you joined me for another lesson today. Now, remember, readers, hopefully by now you have established a regular reading routine. Regular meaning that there are certain days of the week, if not every day, that you are able to carve out some time in your day to do some really great reading. And as always, recording in your, of course, your reading notebook. All right. So if you have not established that really good routine yet, then please continue to work on it. Ideally, if this were an ideal world, you would have 20 to 30 minutes every day to do some really good reading. However, we know that this world is not quite ideal, and sometimes our schedules aren't exactly ideal as well. So if you're a person that has a lot of extracurricular activities and things that you do in your evenings, then it may be harder for you to carve out that time. But please try to make sure that you are reading at least 4 nights a week. And depending on what grade you're in, if you're in third grade, please make sure you're reading a minimum of 20 minutes per night. And then, of course, if you're a little bit older in fourth, fifth, sixth grades, hopefully by now you're reading at least 30 minutes on every night, or at least during those regular days in your schedule. So think of ways that you can make reading more fun for yourself. Don't forget to have maybe like a pajama night where everybody at home wears their pajamas. Everybody gets a chance to just get somewhere comfortable and read on their own. Or you can read as a family and do shared reading where everyone takes a turn reading from the book, and you guys have an opportunity to talk about it. That's like making your own little book club, okay? So that always makes it really fun. I know that's what's worked for my son, who turned from a definite non-reader, and eventually he became a voracious reader. What do you think voracious means? Yes, he loves to read all of the time. He can't get enough. And even when we're in the car, now if we're going on little short trips, take half an hour or so, he's reading on his phone. So I can't get him to stop reading now, but of course I wouldn't want to. But yes, make sure you are working on establishing your own reading routine, because that's what makes really good readers. Really good readers make time to read. So to become a better reader, guys, make sure you're practicing your strategies by reading at home. Don't forget about that reading notebook as well. All right, guys, so I'm so glad that you joined me today. I'm going to share with you, yes, Miss Gina is sharing with you another one of my favorite books. This one was always a favorite of mine when I was teaching in an actual brick and mortar classroom, meaning I actually taught at a school building in my own classroom. Of course, now I'm doing a lot of virtual teaching now. So with the pandemic and all of that was going on, I'm still teaching virtually. So, I don't get a chance to really have that great interaction with kids and actually see, their faces a lot of the times as I'm sharing stories. But this is one that I have used for years in my own classroom. It is a wonderful story called Unspoken. And what makes this book really, really interesting, guys, it has no words, not one, except for, of course, the name of the book, which is on the front cover. But other than that, the book has no words. You're probably asking yourself, how can it be a book if it doesn't have words? Well, this artist who did this book, and I will say wrote the book, because it tells a story through illustration. So I love this book because One of the things that good readers do is we do pay attention to illustrations. And so today, detectives, as you put on your detective cap and do some really great thinking, I want you to look specifically for those clues in our illustrations today to see if you can understand what this story is all about. All right, let me go ahead and switch my camera so you can see this wonderful and amazing book. All right, and it takes my camera a moment to, focus in, but the name of the book is called Unspoken. And I love the fact that it's called Unspoken. The characters never speak to each other. There are no words, but it is a fabulous book. Okay. And I'm going to try not to reveal too much so that as we get to the lesson, you guys will understand a little bit more about what's going on in this story. So this is how our story opens up. So when we have a book that's like this, we definitely want to pay attention to the illustrations because that's all we have. There are no words. So think about the things that we see. What do you observe? Well, I see a girl here that's obviously bringing her cow somewhere. Looks like she has a cat or a cat that's kind of attached herself. But she's watching these men on horseback. Think about what you see about the men. What do you notice about these men? Okay. So look at those really great details. I see a flag here. Doesn't look like an American flag, at least not one that the American flag we know of today. Our stars and stripes. And look how the men are dressed as well. Right? And here the girl is. That must be her cat because she's holding him. She's kind of stopping. And if you notice, she's watching the men move on. Maybe she has questions, wondering who they are, where they're going. Okay. To the next page here. All right. So think about what you see on this page. Ooh, kind of making a connection here. I see an older lady at the door of like a cabin or a house. And there's the girl's little cat, but let's take a look. There's chickens all around. Looks like she's got something in the bowl. So I'm thinking maybe she's doing some of her chores, possibly, and feeding the chickens. And I'm using my background knowledge from my grandmother. I actually called her my granny, and she lived on a huge farm in Alabama. And I would love to go visit her, but of course, there were lots of chores to do. And when I went to visit her every summer, I would help her with a lot of the chores. So, and she had chickens and pigs and cows and a huge garden. So, looks to me like the little girl is doing part of her chores, which looks like feeding the chickens. Okay. It also looks like they have some kind of a barn or outbuilding on the farm. Just like my granny, they had a nice big barn. Right. All right, let's take a look at this page. Pay attention to our characters, the things that they're holding. Okay. I see the older lady, she has a basket. What do you notice about that basket? Yeah, it looks like it's empty. And even though we don't have dialogue, It could be possibly she wants the girl to do something else. Okay. We can see the cow over here, kind of confined there. I guess that's the barn. Now let's take a look at this page. All right, let's see how we're reading the story. Ah, she's got the basket with her now. So her grandmother, mother maybe, probably asked her to go and gather something from that shed or barn. What could she be gathering? Well, I remember their chickens being out. I wonder if she's going to gather eggs from the hen house, possibly. Not sure, but that's a pretty good, what I would call an inference. And that's what we're going to talk about today, making an inference. It does look like she's gathering eggs just from the shape of what she has there. But look how concerned she is. Even her cat looks a little bit concerned. She's looking over her shoulder. I know when that I'm going places and if I hear something, maybe a strange noise or something, I'll pause or stop and look over my shoulder or look in the direction that the sound came from. And going by her expression on her face, maybe she heard something. She looks a little bit concerned. All right, let's take a look what she possibly could be looking at. All right, you notice anything? Looks like here they have corn stalks that are actually drying in the shed. Okay, people would chop that corn and put it out to dry. So it looks like that's what they're doing in part of the shed there. What do you notice? Let's see what good detectives you are today. Oh, did you notice what I noticed? Oh, I think she might have heard something. Why do you think? Do you see what I see? Look here. Oh, that's an eye. Uh-oh. Now, if I was her, I would be concerned if you hear rustling or something in the corn stalks, right? All right, let's see where this story goes. And so this is a close-up of those corn stalks. Right, what do you notice now? Yeah, I can take a look and we can see that there's definitely something or someone in hiding in the corn, or maybe not hiding, just in the corn. Ooh, that would kind of freak me out a little bit. If I'm going to get eggs and I suddenly hear something over there and I'm looking at over my shoulder, how do you think the little girl's going to respond? How would you respond? Oh, I think I'd take off running. Let's see what she does. See what a good story this is? We don't even need words. Look at her face. Look at her face. How does she feel? Yeah, I'm thinking you're right. I'm thinking she is scared. She didn't take the time to investigate. I don't think I would either. And here we see she's definitely scared. Look at her, poor thing. Oh, she's even dropped her basket. If you take a look at the bottom there. So whatever she was in there gathering, she's dropped them. Looks like she's not at the porch of the house, maybe. Looks like the house because I see a dresser and I see a chair. So this is obviously not the barn, but probably she's hiding. She's still afraid, but she went to the house. Whoops. All right, let's take a look. What's happening on this page, detectives? Remember, look at those clues. What do you notice? Well, I noticed it looks like a family and seems like they're gathered around a table. And I see what almost looks like my granny's biscuits and something here in this pot. So it looks like they're gathering probably for the evening meal because it looks like it's kind of dark inside. They've got a fire and a lantern going. So I'm assuming this is not in the middle of the day when the sun is out and sunlight is coming through the windows. So I'm thinking they're sharing their evening meal or their dinner. And see how their hands are clasped, even the little girl's hands. Looks like they're saying their prayer before they get started with that meal. But look, as their eyes are closed, what is the little girl doing? Looking over her shoulder with her eyes wide open. I wonder what she's thinking. Okay, let's take a look at the next page. I want to keep these things in your mind as we go. Remember, the person who illustrated this is telling a story just with the illustrations and no words. So we really have to pay attention to the illustrations. All right, it looks like she's left the house in the background, right? We see the moon, the stars here. She's got a lantern. She's definitely out at night. Must be kind of chilly. She's got like a shawl or something around her. And she's also carrying something, a little bundle there. All right. Where do you think she's going at night? It almost looks like she's going in the direction of that shed or the hen house. I'm not quite sure what it was. Okay. Wow, let's take a look. Let's take a look at her face. Her face is different now. I want to ask you, does she look really scared? I don't think so. She actually has a little bit of a smile on her face, and her eyes, they look kind. They don't look like she's frightened. She's not frowning or anything like that. So I don't think she's scared at all. And look at her posture even. She's kind of leaning forward on her arms there, but she's got her legs tucked underneath her. That's kind of a pretty comfortable position. Now, not for someone as old as me, but definitely for a child, right? That's a pretty comfortable position. She's brought her lantern, but look at what she has out. What do you see? Looks to me like she's got one of those great little biscuits there. All right, remember what we saw in the corn. All right, readers, keep all of these things in mind. I don't want to give away too much. Okay. All right, and look at what she's doing now. I'm not sure if this woman is her mother or possibly her grandmother, but we see that this person is knitting by the lantern. And look at her face now. It almost seems as if she's trying to sneak by, or she was hoping maybe that everybody was in bed. Yeah, because I remember when she was going to the shed with her little bundle wrapped in her arms, she was looking back towards the house, probably hoping that no one would notice she was gone. And now she realizes that she's gotten back. Her grandmother or possibly her mother is actually up. So, uh-oh. She kind of looks like her face is saying that, right? Uh-oh, I think I'm going to get caught. All right. Look at this. I see what looks like almost like apple pie or maybe peach pie. maybe a potato or something. Ooh, that looks like cornbread. Oh, a chicken leg, right? What do you think the author's showing us with these different kinds of food? Yeah. Remember the first time she went? She was sitting with her legs tucked under her and she had that biscuit. Now, what do we know from these pictures? All right. I'm starting to think that maybe in the corn, maybe it's a person and not an animal. Because it seems like she's bringing just kind of regular food that people would eat. So I'm kind of changing my thinking about that because at first I was thinking that could possibly be an animal, but now I'm starting to think maybe there's a person there and she's feeding that person over time. Okay. So let's get to this page. Seems like she's still there doing chores, maybe carrying a bucket of water, maybe watering some of the animals. But now look. Okay, we see the house. There's a fire going here because we see the smoke. And there's men that have come to the farm, looks like. They're on horseback again. But I don't know if these men are soldiers. I don't see that flag again. It doesn't look like I see a particular uniform. Okay, but they're carrying something here. And look how she's watching. She's not watching from out in the open. She's kind of peeking from around the corner of the shed, isn't she? What do you think she's wondering? Maybe she's wondering who the men are. Okay, let's see if we can find out. Okay. Well, it looks to me like an older man. And maybe this is her grandmother. Maybe this is her mother. This woman looks a little bit younger than the other. All right. Oh, look at the men. I think the men are in the house. What is he carrying? Yeah, it looks like an old type of gun, doesn't it? Grandpa looks concerned. Okay. Let's see the other page. Now, this man has a poster. Look at his face. He doesn't seem like a friendly sort of visit, is it? He's showing a poster, so he must have a question. And look who's hiding out in the little cubby underneath the stairs there. Okay, so it seems like she's listening to this conversation going on between the adults in her family and these two men that have come to the farm. All right, and there we see an eye. We don't know whose that is. We know the girl was kind of hiding in the cubby, but not sure if that's her eye or not. Wow, this illustrator does a great job of telling the story, right? Already I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I want to find out what happens next. Why are these men there? And remember that one guy with the poster, he didn't seem like, with the flyer, he didn't seem like a very happy sort of person. Okay, it looks like they're leaving the farm. There's the house, there's the shed. And again, I'm not sure that they were happy about that visit. So whatever they had to say to the grandfather, I'm not too sure they were happy about that visit. So Let's see what else happens. There she goes at night again. She's got her lantern. She's leaving the house. Again, she's looking over her shoulder. I wonder why she's looking over her shoulder now. Do you think she's really concerned about someone from the house seeing her? I don't know, because I'm trying to put myself in her shoes. And that's always a good thing to do as a reader. If I put myself in her shoes, after seeing those men come to your house with guns, and remember, they didn't look like nice men necessarily, like this was just a friendly visit. She might be concerned that those men, making sure those men aren't there, that they're watching her, possibly. I don't know. That's just my take on it, putting myself in her shoes, our character's shoes. That's another good strategy as a reader that we can use to try to understand how our character may be feeling. Okay. But she's definitely going toward the shed again. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, there she is. It looks like she's inside the shed. What is she looking at? Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay, it looks like a little doll. But it definitely looks homemade, doesn't it? It's not like the dolls we buy today. The dolls we buy today are pretty fancy. Our dolls even have their own cars and houses, but this definitely looks like a homemade doll. So again, giving me more evidence that this was from a long time ago, just from that flag, the way the men are dressed. Okay. And look at the clothes the doll's wearing that the person made the clothes from. That's the end of the story here. The last page. What do you notice? Yeah, she's got the doll in bed with her. And we can even see the stars outside. All right, and that's how the story ends. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about this story. There's so much to really talk about in this story. All right, let me get to, and I am going to get this up and running here. Just give me just a moment to share my screen again. All right. So you might be asking yourself, well, Miss Gina, what are you going to teach us today? Well, today we're going to talk about inferring. So this is our introduction to inferring. And inferring is one of those words that you guys are probably thinking is pretty hard. But I want you to see today that inferring is actually something that you already do. All right, so let's get into our lesson today that goes with the book. Now, this is the Common Core standard. Is right there from third through fifth grade, is referring to details and examples in the text when explaining what the text says explicitly and when drawing inferences from the text. And that's what we're doing today. We're going to refer to those details when we draw inferences from the text. All right, so you might be asking yourself, well, what is inferring? Well, it's actually pretty easy. Inferring is when you're using your observation and your background knowledge to figure something out. And you're probably thinking, inferring, when do I do that? Well, I want you to think about it for just a moment. Okay. All right. Sometimes we get ourselves into situations and we actually do some inferring every single day. Let's say you've decided that you want a raise in your allowance. There's something really special you want to buy, whatever that thing might be. Maybe you want a brand new phone, or maybe you want a video game, or, there's no telling. Maybe you just want to have money to go out with your friends. Right? So you want a raise in your allowance. So let's just say you're at home and, mom decides, hey, I've got to go to the grocery store. I need your help. Why don't you go ahead and come with me? You go to the grocery store. She gets in the checkout lane and they have scanned all the items and they tell your mom how much they cost. And you hear your mother say, wow, I bought the same thing I usually buy and it's more expensive than it was just a month ago. I'm paying, so much more money for the same exact items. And she kind of has this little frown on her face, right? She's not happy about paying more for the same thing. Who is? Then when you get home, you're like, well, I'm not going to ask her right now. So you get home and you guys have your dinner and all of that. And you're thinking, okay, I'll tell them before I go to bed. I'll ask if I can have a raise in my allowance. So you come down the stairs or you come into the kitchen and your dad and your mom are writing out bills. Now you see your dad frowning and complaining. Oh, we can't pay this yet. We don't have enough money. We're going to have to wait. Things are so tight right now. We just don't have the money. This one's going to have to wait. So you hear that. Now, do you go ahead and ask for that raise in your allowance? Or are you going to use what you have observed and your own background knowledge to figure out that, ooh, now is not the time to ask for a raise in my allowance? I bet you came to that conclusion all on your own. And guess what? You just inferred that this was not the time to ask for a raise in your allowance. You observed your mom complain about paying too much for the same things at the grocery store. You observed your dad talking about, hey, we can't pay all of these bills. Some of these will have to wait. It's just too tight right now. We don't have the money. And so you use those observations and your own background knowledge to say, hey, if I ask for more money for my allowance, they're automatically going to tell me no now. So I think I better wait till a better time. Okay, so what you just did was you were inferring. So guys, you do this all the time. So inferring really isn't that hard. Now we just know we need to know how to do it from a text, or in this case, our illustrations. So what is inferring? Well, it's using the clues either from a text or the illustrations, or sometimes you have a text that has both text and illustration. So you're going to look at the clues. You're going to add what you know, your own background knowledge, like what do you know about this? Then with that, you're going to make your inference, okay? Just like you used the clues before, right? Mom paid too much in groceries. She complained about that. Dad said he was writing out the bills and said, hey, these couple of bills are going to have to wait. We just don't have the money. You use those clues, then you use what you already know. Mom and dad don't have any more money to give me. So my inference is this is not a good time to ask for a raise in my allowance. Okay, so that's the same thing you just did. You used the clues, you added what you know, and you made an inference. Okay. So when we really think about it, making an inference is like being a detective. You use the clues in the text or the illustration, plus your own knowledge to make that inference. All right, so let's be the detective. So How are we going to make that inference? We're going to ask ourselves a couple of questions. First question is, what clues are in the text or the illustration? And the next question is, what do we know about the clues? All right, so same thing with mom and dad and the money. Okay, the clues were at the grocery store, mom complained, and then dad complained when they were writing out the bills. Those were the clues. What do you know about the clues? Well, if mom and dad don't have the money to pay all the bills, there's no way they're going to have extra money to give you extra money for your allowance. Okay. All right. So here's a graphic organizer that you can use. So go ahead and get out your reading notebook and your pencil. Just kind of draw a 3-column chart. In the first column, you're going to put what the text says, or in this case, what the illustrations tell us, right? Okay. Then you're going to add in the middle column, what do you know about what the text says or what the illustration shows? What do you know about that? Then you're going to put those two things together and you're going to make your inference. All right. Remember, if you have not had time to get this down into your notebook, you can definitely pause the video at this time to make sure that you have an opportunity to draw that in your notebook, because we're going to do it together today using our story, Unspoken. So just pause it if you need it. All right, so let's look at an example from the story. And this was from the very beginning, right? This is where we were talking about, the men on horseback and the things that, So what do we notice and what do we know? Okay, so using the chart, remember what we said, they're definitely on horseback. We saw that flag there, right? All right, so if I'm filling this out, so instead of text, I just put that we're dealing with illustration. So we had an illustration of men on horseback, and of course they were flying a flag. Then I looked at what I know. This flag doesn't look like the regular American flag that we fly today. It looks like a Confederate flag, something that the Southern states would use. And I saw that the men were wearing what appeared to be uniforms. Okay, so let's go back to the picture. Definitely see like the men are mostly dressed very much alike. Okay, so that's what made me think that they could be uniforms. So my inference is that I think these men are Confederate soldiers. All right. And so thinking about that in my inference, if they're Confederate soldiers, then this story must have taken place a long time ago, probably in the 1800s. Okay. All right. So look for the clues. What do you notice and what do you know about that? Remember what we said we noticed on this page. All right. Jot it down in your notebook. What do you notice and what do you know? Okay, remember, if you need more time, you can always pause the video. Let's see what you came up with. All right, what I noticed. Okay, we're on the second row there, okay? There's something in the corn stalks that I saw. Remember, we saw that eye kind of looking out, right? And then thinking about what I know that corn stalks, when they start to dry, they feel very rough. And so that's an uncomfortable place to be if you're just, there in the corn stalks. So adding that there's someone or something there, because we saw the eye, and that knowing that corn stalks aren't very comfortable, it's not a comfortable place to be. amid a bunch of dry corn stalks. They're very scratchy. My inference is I think something or someone is hiding in there for a reason. Because remember, it's not a comfortable place to be. All right. They're like really, really scratchy. And I kind of use what I know from, helping my granny on her farm. All right. So remember, what did we notice on this page? What did we notice on this page of the story? Think about how the girl is looking and what she has around her. All right. It seems like the girl's definitely sitting, right, with her legs kind of tucked underneath her. And she seems to have brought food, looked like a biscuit, remember? And she had it like spread out on this piece of cloth. And what do I know about that is I know that people can be really kind to other people, like by helping them out, especially when they know that there's something that they need just to survive. So, I know that, living where I live, that we've seen homeless people around and things like that. And so, our family and I know other families do donate food to the food banks and give money to the food banks as well to provide food for homeless people. And so that's part of that, people helping others get what they need to survive because we know everyone needs food. So putting that together with what I know, I think that this girl has brought food, and I'm beginning to think it's a person that's hiding in the corn stalks because I notice she's bringing like people food. I don't see her really bringing like scraps of food or, things that you would feed to, other animals. Like if you had, a dog or a cat or anything like that. So I definitely think there's a person that's hiding. And I think she's brought food for that person. That helps me learn a lot about our character as well. She seems to be very kind-hearted and she wants to be helpful. Remember, we've already talked about characters, guys, right? Yeah, so we're going to use everything we know to really understand this story. All right, so let's look at some other clues. What did you notice on this page? Right, think about the two men. Remember, they're having that conversation with, it looked like the grandfather of the household. Yeah, and the girl kind of peeking and listening in. All right, jot down your thinking in your notebook there and your chart, what the text shows, or in this case, the illustration shows. And then what do you know? Think about what you know if we said that this story seems like it's from a long time ago, maybe the 1800s. Because even the gun looks pretty old that they have. Okay. All right. If you notice that the man in the house is holding a wanted poster, because that's what's at the top, and it actually had the word escaped in it. So I started putting together some of the other things I noticed in the book for the what I know part. And what I know is that during slavery, people would search for escaped slaves because they would get a reward for returning them back to their master. Okay. So the people would definitely, that gives an incentive for people to go out and look for escaped slaves to try to bring them back so they can claim that reward. So my inference is about the men. I think that these men are slave catchers. So they're hired to go after escaped slaves and bring them back for the reward. Okay. Did you guys come up with something similar? All right. So now that we're starting to make all of these different inferences, remember, we have to keep those inferences in mind. Yeah, and I had to start mine on a new page since I was, typing them in. But you can just keep adding on to your chart. You can even draw a new chart on a new page when you need to. All right, here we're looking for the clues again. All right. Remember when she was walking towards the shed? She's got the bundle in her arms. She's got her lantern out. We can see the little sliver of moon and the stars. All right, so let's look at this middle row. The girl, she has a lantern and she's actually walking toward the shed. I could see that from the evidence in the illustration. She was also carrying a bundle, right? Wrapped in that checkered fabric. All right, what do I know is that kids aren't allowed at night alone because it could be dangerous. And if you noticed, she was looking behind her like she was hoping nobody saw her. Now, in this case, I'm beginning to think maybe she doesn't want those men who were at the house earlier to see where she's going, possibly. All right, so here's my inference, and I'm going to use the inference that I made before. I think she's actually going to warn the person in the shed may be that escaped slave. And I think she's going to the shed to warn them that the slave catchers came to the house looking for them. And of course, seems like she's brought some food as well. Okay, because she was carrying that bundle, right? And it was wrapped in that checkered fabric. And if you notice, every time she was bringing food, it was wrapped in that same checkered fabric. All right, something else I know about that checkered fabric. Remember, guys, people back in the 1800s did not have the throwaway paper towels and napkins that we use. When we go to the store, we go to Walmart and we get paper towels, we get napkins, but we get the ones that are in a big pack. And once we wipe our hands, we just throw them away. Well, a long time ago, this is not something that they had. So people had to use real cloth napkins and things like that. So, and they would just wash them, in order to use them again. So that's something I know as well about the cloth that they were using. Okay. All right, this is at the end of the story. What did you notice on these 2 pages? And what do you know about that? All right, detectives, be really good at looking at those clues and jotting them down in your chart. That's what the illustration is showing. Then think about what you know so far, like what's happened in this story. All right. I definitely see that there's a doll in the shed when she goes. And then in that picture underneath, she had the doll with her when she went to bed. And what I know about this time period is that, remember, there's no Walmart, there's no Target. They don't have the dolls that are created in, manufacturing plants that we have today. So a long time ago, people would make dolls out of bits of extra fabric, extra items that they had to stuff the dolls with. And if you remember, the doll was actually made from what? Remember that checkered fabric? Okay, did you guys see that? All right, detectives, that's what we're talking about. Using our observation skills to notice all of those great details. So we can see that, and here's my inference. I think the person that was hiding in the shed, that escaped slave, made that doll for that little girl as a thank you for helping. Okay, if you notice, the doll was made from that checkered fabric that the little girl always brought the food in. And the actual face of the doll and the arms and legs were formed from the twisted corn stalks. Did you notice that? All right, let's go back and take a look at it again. Yeah, look at that. You see the face? All right, so this person or the escaped slave looks like they twisted the cornstalk in the form of a little person and then used that fabric to make a kind of rough looking dress for the doll. And the girl obviously cherished it because she has it in bed with her at the end. Okay. All right. And so that was my big inference there. All right. So once again, and I'm going to put a minute on the clock to give you an opportunity to draw a brand new chart so that you can use when you read. All right. Remember, in that first column, you need to put what the text says or the illustration. You're going to add what you know. That's why I had the little head there with the brain, because we've got to use our brains to figure out what we know. And then, of course, that's going to equal your inference. What inference did you make based on what the text says plus what you know? All right, so go ahead and draw that chart into your notebook. And remember, this is a chart that you can just keep making to use as you are reading at home to make those great inferences. All right, guys, as always, if you need more time, then all you have to do is pause the video to make sure you get a chance to draw the chart in your notebook. You can even snip it if you just want to take a picture of it. For those of you that know, if you have how to use your snipping tool on your computer, that's just something I use all the time because I never have time to actually draw things. And I'm not all that great about drawing things. So if you need to use your snip tool or take a picture of it with your phone, that's perfectly fine as well, just as long as you know what it looks like so you can draw it in your notebook. All right, so once we finish our story, we think about what inference can we make about the story. In other words, we put everything together to really understand what this story was all about. So I want you guys to use your reading notebook, and I want you to jot down your inference about this story. All right, so it says, what inference can you make about what this story was really all about? What was this story really all about? Another minute on the clock. What inference can you make about this story? What was it really all about? Can you jot it down in just a sentence or two? And make sure you think about that evidence that you can support your inference with. It should all be in your chart. Think about what you know about that time period as well. All right, guys, as always, if you need more time, please pause the video so you can jot down all of your thinking before you compare it to my example, okay? All right, so my big inference, in other words, that big inference about this whole story, all right, is there in that yellow kind of gold color. This story is about a person that was hiding in a family shed. I wasn't sure if it was a hen house during times of slavery. I think that this house was a house that was a station on the Underground Railroad. All right, and I'm going to share with you some of my thinking about that. All right, so if you take a look underneath, that's my thinking that goes with my inference. In other words, what's in that lighter color underneath is the support for my inference. All right, I think the girl in the story and her grandmother, obviously the girl definitely knew that there was someone hiding in the shed, but I have a feeling the grandmother knew as well. If you remember, there was a time in the story when the girl the first time she went to take food to the person in the shed, that the grandmother was all of a sudden up and knitting. I have a feeling the girl would not have snuck out if her grandmother was up then. So I think the grandmother must have awakened or came down later when she realized the little girl was gone and she was waiting for her to get back. So I think that the grandmother actually knew what was going on. And she let the girl do whatever she needed to do to help that person in need. All right. So then again, I'm going to continue with what I wrote at the bottom. At first, the girl seemed afraid. Remember when she first saw that eye, the first time her grandmother gave her the basket and asked her to retrieve whatever was in the shed? I thought they were eggs, but we're not sure if they were eggs or not. They could have been some kind of root vegetables or potatoes or something. I'm not sure. But she was very afraid when she first saw that. But we definitely saw her behavior and her attitude change because she kept bringing that leftover food. You remember the pages where the illustrator Henry Cole illustrated that same checkered napkin with different kinds of food. Remember the pie, the potato, the chicken leg, all of that. So she kept bringing food time and again, and she would actually visit the person that was in the shed. All right, she didn't become scared again until the men came to the house. Remember, we thought those men were probably slave catchers and they were after the person in the shed. Okay. And we also know that that doll at the end was made of the napkin that the girl had brought all the food in and corn husks. Remember, this person, if this person is an escaped slave and what we said is true, which I think our inferences are right on point, all right, then that's all they had to be able to say thank you. They don't have things with them. This person even needed food and probably fresh water as well. And I'm sure the girl provided anything she could. But that's all they had to say thank you. So the fact that that person took the time to create that homemade doll for her says a lot about the level of gratitude the person had for what the little girl did and all the help that she provided. Okay, so I definitely think that this story is about an escaped slave who was hiding using the Underground Railroad. And there were a couple of other clues as well. If you noticed on one of the pages where it showed the sliver of moon and the stars, that was the Big Dipper. And if you've ever read the story, Follow the Drinking Gourd, there were songs that the slaves would sing that would give the other slaves the route to take. To be able to stop at these different stations along the Underground Railroad. So really, really fabulous book. All right, so to kind of recap what you guys learned today, inferring really does require detective skills. You have to look for those clues in the illustration and the text, and you really do have to pay attention to those details. Then you're going to add that to your background knowledge. Because remember, like there were certain things we picked out that told us this story took place a long time ago. Remember that Confederate flag and some other things like the gun style the rifles being very old. Even the uniforms that the first men wore seemed very old-fashioned, not like the men in the army would wear today. okay, or our Marine Corps or Air Force, or our Navy. Their uniforms look much different than the uniforms in the 1800s. Okay, so using all of that to kind of figure out what those clues mean. All right, so calling all detectives, calling all detectives. Let's make sure you are practicing looking for those clues in the text and the illustrations. Remember to use your reading notebook to record your inferences and use that chart. It is very, very helpful for you to see all of your inferences there in a chart. And then once you put it all together, you ask yourself, what was the story really all about? And that's when you can take a look at that and come to a really great big inference about the story. As always, guys, thank you, thank you, thank you. Guys, knowledge is power. Don't let anyone else tell you differently. Real power comes from knowledge because it's not something that can take away, that someone can take away from you. People go broke and lose their money all the time by bad investments or horrible spending habits, but knowledge, something that you have in your brain, it stays for a lifetime. So knowledge is power. Remember to like this video and please subscribe. That way, the more people I have that I see that are viewing it, that are subscribing, it encourages me to make more of these videos. Okay, so be sure to like it and subscribe. All right, as always, it has been a joy, and I know it's been a couple of weeks since the last video was out, but like I said before, I am a full-time teacher, so not only am I doing these presentations, but I'm also doing lessons for my regular virtual classes that I do every day, and so it's a lot of planning, plus with everything else I have going on in my life. So please be patient. I will try to stick to, putting out one video. I try to do it on Sundays, Sunday night. And I will try to keep to that schedule as much as I can, but please know also that, this is life and things happen. So sometimes, it might be 2 weeks before I can get something out again, but just be patient, but keep checking. And if you subscribe, you'll know when that new video is up for you guys to view. So as always, thank you guys so much. Readers, remember, the #1 way to becoming a really great reader is to practice reading. And so get, some great books. This book, Unspoken, is a wonderful book. And the part that I didn't show you, it is a story from the Underground Railroad. And this illustrator is Henry Cole. And just a beautiful, beautiful story, wonderful illustrations, so many great clues in there that we can definitely understand and see what was happening. And he was told a fabulous, fabulous story. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. You can add it to your list. I bought mine, of course, online. So if this is a book, but I guarantee you that a lot of libraries would probably have this book. And you can look for other wordless books. Just ask your librarian. There are a couple of illustrators out there that have, and I can't remember the name of the other illustrator that I used a lot. It just, for some reason, as I get older, I start losing these little bits of information. But if you ask your librarian, I'm sure they'll be able to help you if you wanted to practice with some wordless books. There are some great ones out there. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will see you next time, reading detectives.